Alright. She-Hulk. So I'm not doing a review. I'm just going to be talking about the discourse surrounding the first episode of the MCU's latest installment on Disney Plus, She-Hulk, Attorney at Law. Which there's been a lot of, misogyny. Hooray! So I thought I'd make kind of a cool, angry rant video defending Jennifer Walters, Attorney at Law. And I don't want to show any of the tweets or any of the YouTubers thumbnails even. I don't want to give that negativity any more attention. So, if you've been online ever and been a part of any fandom that has dared to have a woman in it, you get the gist. You know what's kind of up. And I just really wanted to validate any women, any female presenting, even just people who pass for female, whether they are or are not. I'm sure you have experienced what they're talking about in this show. And I want to get a little into why it is important to discuss that. So please just be positive and bear with me here. All right. Here's the main primary quote that is upsetting so many chuds. Jennifer Walters says to Bruce Banner / at this particular moment, Smart Hulk, "Here's the thing, Bruce. I'm great at controlling my anger. I do it all the time. When I'm catcalled in the street, when incompetent men explain my own area of expertise to me, I do it pretty much every day because if I don't, I will get called emotional or difficult, or I might just get murdered. So I'm an expert at controlling my anger because I do it infinitely more than you." All right, so a lot to unpack there, really. I would like to look at Bruce first. A lot of people were very angry that Jennifer said this specifically to Bruce because he's the Hulk, and I've seen two reasons mainly as to why specifically that enraged some people. The first is because Bruce has lost a lot of people. I don't want to throw mortality in your face, but a 40-something-year-old man who's lost loved ones? What? No. Especially in the MCU where the snap has happened, everybody's lost. Everyone has experienced loss in this world. Look, that doesn't negate what she's talking about. That doesn't take away anything of what she said, the fact that he's probably lost loved ones. And, some people do experience anger when they have lost someone. Not everyone does. And Bruce specifically says that the triggers are anger and fear. He doesn't mention sadness, but let's just say sadness is also a trigger that would make Bruce turn into Hulk. Again, this is the MCU. Everyone in this world has experienced loss. Also, just being a 30-something-year-old person, you've probably experienced loss of a loved one. That's just being a human being. I think that's a very bad faith argument. And then the other reason that I've noticed that people were very angry that she specifically said this to Bruce is because he's the Hulk. All he does is anger management. I think it's kind of the opposite, right? If Bruce was very good at controlling his anger and his temper, he would never turn into the Hulk, so he wouldn't be there wouldn't be a story there. Maybe I've misunderstood the character. I've not specifically read Hulk comic books, not really my favorite character, but I just found that kind of odd. His whole thing is he loses his temper. Particularly when you go into the older comic books, right? Alright, well, whatever. Specifically the quote that she's saying, I saw more as a difference between Hulk and She-Hulk. They experience their anger differently because in men and women experience their anger differently. And I saw this as the comic book writers and likely the show's writers realize this, because I'm sure at some point they've been around people. So there are studies. I have the articles that I'm referencing linked below. I'm just going to paraphrase because they all had similar conclusions, but notably, for instance, one of them is by the APA, and if you're not familiar, that is the American Psychological Association. They are the people who put out the DSM, which is the diagnostic manual. So if anyone you know or you yourself have ever been diagnosed with a mental illness by a mental health professional like psychologist or a psychiatrist, they use that specific diagnostic manual that the APA puts out. So when it comes to information that is put out by them, generally it would be considered probably very reputable. So this is generally considered very reputable. All right. Okay. So the conclusions again were similar, and I'm paraphrasing specifics, so link below. All right. Men and women experience anger just as often as one another. However, how they deal and behave when angry is different, and that is likely because of gender socialization, which I'll explain a bit more in momentarily. So men tend to be more overt and aggressive when they're angry, and they also tend to be more impulsive and quick to act out on their anger. Women, however, tend to suppress and hold on to their anger longer, and they tend to be more passive aggressive. So sometimes how this can be displayed is by being kind of snippety and like short with people, or like cutting people off, and by that I mean like blocking them on social media or ghosting them, stuff like that. And like writing people off, like just, I'm done with you kind of stuff. So gender socialization is the process of teaching individuals how to behave under the social expectations of their gender, known as gender roles. Gender socialization involves the teaching of gender stereotypes. Gender stereotypes are certain behaviors and attitudes that are considered characteristics of boys and girls. These, what this looks like changes over time and is different in different cultures. But how we learn gender socialization is by our family, at school, through peers, and what I'm going to be talking about here, for the most part, is through media. So TV, books, movies, comic books. I basically just said the same thing over and over again. You get the point. So basically, gender socialization is how you learn to act like a boy or girl based on how people treat you. And, you know, just acting out with other people. Okay. So essentially, women, as it pertains to anger, are taught not to lash out when angry because it's not considered feminine, and also because it can be dangerous. I'll elaborate more on that. For men, it's more acceptable to be aggressive and loud and at times even violent under the misguided idea of boys will be boys. And I'm not saying any of this stuff, to be clear, is right or wrong. I'm not condoning it. I'm not saying it's evil, anything like that. I'm just saying, as, you know, someone who's taken enough sociology classes and can read and has lived in America my whole life, these are just, in general, truths. This is just how our world and society works at this point in time, and also kind of throughout history. It's just something that's been repeated over and over. Anyway, all right. I would like to validate Jenn Walters, attorney at law's experiences, and I'm going to be using a lot of personal anecdotes that probably a lot of women, female passing, whether or not they identify as women or not, just a lot of people will relate to this. So I would like to put a warning on it, because I will be describing a lot of like misogynist, sexist, sexual, and even violent behaviors, and that is something a lot of people probably don't want to hear. So if that is something that would trouble you, take care of yourself, skip to the end. Thanks for watching. Lord. Okay. I got this. All right. So when I was a teenager, I worked at a movie theater and in the deep south. And I got a lot of angry customers. But that's just kind of life in a service industry, especially in the deep south. Oh my god. A notable situation arose, something that I will never forget. I was attempting to explain something to a man. He was pissed, and my male coworker came over and intentionally said the same thing that I had told the man verbatim, word for word. And the angry dude completely accepted what my male coworker said with a freaking smile on his face. And my manager, who was an older woman, was standing beside me, and she said to me, sometimes people just want to talk to a man. I think I was 19 at the time, and that is something that is a hypothesis, really, that has been tested and proved over and over and over again throughout my life. There is a clear and blatant double standard in treatment of men versus women at work, in school, just really all over life, but especially it's noticeable in work, because I think that's where it feels the most ridiculous. And it's like, I don't know, do you think that like women can't do math because someone checked box female when they were born? Or like, you think somehow like female people or women, or just anyone who identifies as female or looks like a woman in this case, like, do you think that we're less capable because, I don't know, like, I don't get it. I don't know why this is a thing, but it is a thing, and it's been perpetuated over and over. Oh, because we have baby boxes. But then not all women do, so it's like, what? But most of these people are probably transphobic anyway, so meh. It's just ridiculous. Like, there's so many times where a man will do something when I'm at work, and I know 100% that man would not have spoken or used those words or used that tone with my male coworker. That boss would not have talked to me in the same way if I was a dude. Like, usually it's customers, to be honest. For my experiences and the types of jobs that I've had, it's usually customers. And it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. But even just like, there's smaller things. Like, I'm a nerd, and there are so many times where someone will say like, oh my god, you like horror movies, or you don't look like you read comic books. Like, you think I look, I don't know what, illiterate? Or what does a person who reads comic books look like? You know what I mean? I get a lot of stuff like that, and it's annoying. Or fucking YouTube comments. A lot of my friends make YouTube videos, and they're, for the most part, men. And I noticed that the way, or they are dressed in comment sections versus the way I'm addressed, and the types of comments that I get are really differently. There's just so many times where there's no fucking way a man would do or say this to another man, but they feel completely comfortable doing it with me, despite it being absolutely inappropriate, because they look at me and checkbox female. It's very annoying. And especially when it's like, going back to the work situation, there's no reason for it. Like, we have the same degrees, or I've been doing this longer. Like, why? Because he likely has penis, does it make him better than me? It's frustration. So of course it makes people mad. Of course it does. If someone looked at you and said, you can't do this as well as them, even though you absolutely can, because, I don't know, they're prettier than you, it's like, what does that have to do with math? Nothing. It's frustrating. And on the point of, I'm moving on. On the point of gender socialization via media, most studio heads are men, and most producers are men, most directors are men, most writers are men, although that does generally seem to be the place where women are more able to break into this, TV movie making field. And the further back in history you go, the more it is comprised of men, percentage-wise. So the landscape of cinema and television is completely skewed towards male. Men control what stories are told and how they're told. And generally speaking, they even write the women who are in the shows and movies. And especially, in the 90s when I was growing up, again, it was very much more male. So if you're watching a TV show that has a young woman in it who goes out and she isn't getting harassed, and I don't mean hit on, I mean harassed every other episode, that is completely unrealistic. That is completely unrealistic. And I think the fact that, so many boys and men watch this and they learn about gender and they learn about women's lives through this and how women are treated through this, and they don't see that, it's a disservice towards them, and it's also a disservice towards women, because it gives them this really unrealistic view of the world. And I'm not saying TV and movies have to be realistic by any means. Please don't. Let's go fantasy. But when we're talking about movies and television like She-Hulk, and they do have a realistic moment, a very realistic moment, we're having a moment where a man and a woman are talking, and a woman's just saying what's real, and no one is in the real world listening and treating this as truth because they've never seen it before. That's a problem. Which is why representation behind the scenes is important too. Cough, cough, hint, hint. Oh, okay. Oh, God. Now we're getting to the nitty gritty dirty stuff. It's a sad day to be alive. Okay, so I'm going to go through a lot of anecdotes. I tried to pick ones that I'm talking about for a specific reason. I did pick a lot of them. These, I was thinking about it, and I came down on the opinion that these are not personal. These are things that have happened to me, but honestly, any woman or female presenting, anyone who looks like they could be a woman or female, likely has these same or very, very similar stories. These are not unique. So here you go. Imagine what it's like being a woman. I say this in generalized. Okay. Imagine being 11 years old and walking out of your junior high, and a man stops and offers you money to have sex with him in broad daylight in front of so many other adults without any fear, because he knows he doesn't need to be afraid in that moment. Imagine being a 14-year-old freshman walking home from school every day, and a man working at an auto repair shop catcalls you to the point where you cross the street and take a long way home to avoid him. Imagine playing billiards and a man comes up from behind you, puts his arms around you, and tells you he can show you how to play when you're 12 and 15 and 19 and 21 and 22 and 24 and over and over and over again. And not just billiards, like any sport. Oh my God. Imagine running into a gas station to use the restroom on a road trip, and a man follows you into said restroom, and you literally have to physically fight to get out unharmed. Imagine being 15 and a pimp stops you, says he likes your look, and offers you a job, even gives you his card, because that's what your worth is as a woman. Imagine going to the store and hearing men talk about your ass, having a man run his hand down your back, having a guy who works there always blatantly looking at your ass, having an older man follow you around the store and, can I just buy some fucking Oreos? I just want some Oreos. Imagine going to a bar and a guy comes over to talk to you, and while talking, folds up a 20, reaches over, places it into your bra. Imagine having a man, unwarningly, you're just minding your own business, slapping your ass. And imagine that's happened to you 100 times. Imagine the janitor at your university. Imagine the janitor at your university blatantly ogling you, catcalling you, whistling at you, following you, trying to chat you up in the library when you're just trying to study, to the point where you are so uncomfortable you start wearing flowy dresses instead of pants because you think that might reduce the issue. Imagine going for a hike and a dude keeps coming up from behind you, despite this being a 3-mile loop, and he keeps stopping to talk to you over and over and over again, until the 7th time, when he comes within a foot of your space and offers you money for a quick blowjob. Imagine being 15 in a woodshop class full of 17 and 18-year-old boys, and your male team. You know what? Definitely shouldn't read that story. No, not the cop one, not the stalker, not the masturbator, not the Russian guys. Fuck. Gonna avoid all of the porn. Okay, so skipping all those ones. Okay, yeah. Imagine being at a work dinner and a male coworker puts his hand on your upper thigh, and when you ask him calmly to move it because you don't want to make a scene, he slides his hand up. And I mean, all of the way effing up. And you still have to keep calm and not make a scene because you've been trained your entire life to not make a scene and to not make waves, because you know everyone else at that table is going to look at you badly, not him. You're going to be the problem, not him. Imagine stopping at a red light only for a man to get out of his car and start screaming at you and hitting your car and saying, "What, you think you're too good for me, you stuck-up bitch?" Because apparently at some point you stumped him, I guess, and he took it very personally. But imagine that has happened to you quite a number of times. And on that, imagine a man following you because you rejected him, screaming at you to the point where you need to break into a sprint and hide. Imagine politely declining an offer to go out with someone and they go off screaming at you, calling you horrible things, or even worse, hitting you. And imagine everyone telling you, well, it hurts to be rejected. Well, you do smile when you talk to people. Well, and making you feel bad for daring to reject a man, because so many good guys condone male entitlement, because so many women are conditioned to feel bad and guilty for rejecting a man. Imagine being 19 and a friend rolls over and pins you down and starts kissing you, which you are really not into, and he takes way too long to notice, and then says, if you're not interested, you can say no, and you never realized you could do that. Because yeah, it's not all men, but starting at a very young age, especially for little girls, unwanted sexualized touching is normalized. And men not accepting no and rejecting has been proven dangerous over and over and over again. So many women are afraid to say no because it is scary, because it is to many men. We know, for instance, 1 out of 3 women are victims of a completed or attempted sexual assault in the United States. What we don't know is 1 out of how many men are perpetrators, which personally I think is a more important number. For every 1 predator, how many victims does he have? Is it a 1-to-1 ratio? So if it's 1 in 3 women, that means 1 in 3 men are the perpetrators of a sexual assault, which in a country with over 300 million people, that would mean over 100 million men are predators. But let's say for every 1 predator, there's 2 victims. That's 1 in 6 men. That's 50 million men in this country who are sexual predators. For every 1 predator, there's 3 victims. 1 in 9 men. That's over 30 million predators in this country. So no, of course it's not all men. I don't think anyone thinks it's all men. But it's a lot, because that's around 30 million, give or take. Even if it's much lower than that, less than 100,000 men will ever go to prison for a sexual assault. And we're talking sexual assault. We're not even going into the more normalized behavior that's accepted and not illegal and that is condoned, but more, sadly, it is conditioned to be accepted and feared by women. And let's not forget 80% of women who are murdered are killed by their ex or current partner. because unwanted touching is normalized. Because all of these things above are normalized. Because people don't care about the Me Too movement. And it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And on a side note, I do want to point out, because there are things that I don't think generally get talked about enough. Age is a big issue. A lot of those aforementioned things I said happened to me when I was very, very under the age of 18. And a lot of that did happen to me when I was under the age of 25. Of course, we did have the whole pandemic thing, which kind of skews those results, but that tends to be the case for a lot of women. As you get older, these sorts of harassments generally tend to slow down. And it's not because you're getting older. And it's not because their looks are diminishing. It's because power. Men who do these types of things know to do that to younger women and girls because they have more power over them. Because those women and girls don't know as much as older women. And they're just not through. They're not through. They're not over it quite yet. You'll get there. I wish you didn't have to. And another thing I would like to mention is that a number of the anecdotes I mentioned, I mentioned that the gentleman who approached my car, because I guess I dismissed him. I have a hearing disorder. If I don't know someone is talking to me ahead of the time, I might not know to be paying attention to watch their mouth to see what they're saying. For women who are hard of hearing and deaf, who get catcalled, it's a lot more dangerous for them. And that's something that I generally don't hear people talking about. Because so often when men catcall, there's really two options. The woman doesn't respond and they let it go, or the woman doesn't respond and they get pissed off. And for, again, hard of hearing and deaf women, they might not realize anything has happened, and the next thing they know, a man who is likely a lot larger and stronger than them is completely rabid and angry at them. So, just, I don't know, something to note. Okay, all of that craziness was to say Jennifer Walters, attorney at law, had a friggin' point. And a lot of CHUDs are really proving her point. Women, yeah, they get mad. I'm mad. I'm making this video. But studies show how we behave is different when we're angry, because if women behaved the same way as men did when they got angry, wow, murder rates would be like way higher. Like, let's just be clear. I have no idea why men seem to want to reject women's experiences instead of listening. I legitimately don't understand. Because it's not woke and it's not political. It's real life. It's real lived experiences for so many women, or even people who just look like women. And that's real life for then half the population, give or take. And I get the personal is political and all that, but this idea of people just existing is seen as political by others is really telling and ridiculous and sad. The lack of empathy. I don't want to just look and say, to cishet white men, because they're not the only problem, and they're not all a problem. But just in general, a lot of men have never had to empathize with other minority groups, because generally men aren't taught to empathize. They're taught to be strong and forward, and alpha isn't even a real thing, but they're taught to be what that is, even though it's not even real. They're taught to take charge and not have to listen and act. And so empathy, I don't know, it's not taught to them. Going back to gender, socialization is a thing, and it's unfortunate. Anyway, mostly made this video to rant, but also to validate. I thought that was really important. And also, I kind of wanted to see if I got any crazy comments. I live life on the edge. Thanks for watching. Please leave a comment. I would like to know if you learned anything, or if I said anything helpful. Even if it's just you figured out what gender socialization is. Alright, life on the edge.